By copying our template, we'll do cp-r template, and we'll call this highlighting. So we'll cd into highlighting. And now let's go ahead and open up our app.js. The first thing we're going to do in here is add the highlight module as a dependency of our own module. So we can do UI-highlight. It's really that simple. Each one of the Angular UI utilities has its own module, something like this, UI dot, and then whatever the name of this specific feature is. What we can use the highlight utility for is highlighting text within a larger portion of text. This is great if your application needs some kind of finding feature, kind of like Control F in pretty much any text editor. So let's go ahead and see how this works. We're going to need some text to display. And so let's go ahead and create scope.text. And I'm just going to paste in some simple lorem ipsum text, and we'll be able to edit this a little bit later. But for now, this is all we need to do. So now that we have some text, let's go ahead and display it in our index.html page. So in here, let's go ahead and inside of our main controller here, let's create a paragraph. And inside of this, we'll create a text area element. And this text area element is where we want to edit this text that we've just put in our scope.text variable here. So we will do ng-model equals text for this text area. Now, if we open this page up in the browser, you can see we have our text area here, and it has our text showing up inside of it. Before we go much further, let's add a little styling to this. We'll just say style equals width equals, let's say 100%, and we can say height equals, I'll say 400 pixels. So there we go. Actually, that's a little bit high. Let's just go down to 200 pixels. Okay, so now we have a nice text area. Now we're not actually going to do the highlighting of text inside this text area. We need to display this text outside of the text area, and we'll highlight it there. So what we could do is just right underneath this, we could have another paragraph, and in here, we could just say text. And this would work just fine. You can see we have our text displaying underneath, and as I add words up above, you can see that it changes what's going on down below. The problem with this is what happens when we actually do our highlighting. The UI.highlighting module is going to wrap the text it's trying to highlight in some HTML. And that means that when we're displaying this text down here, we need to be able to parse HTML. Now, if I add some tags to the text up here, you can see that this is not parsed as HTML. It's parsed as text, which means we can see the tags here instead of actually rendering the tags as HTML. So to render the tags as HTML, we need to do two things. First of all, we need to come back to our terminal and install another Angular component. We need to do bower install angular-sanitize. Angular Sanitize is an official Angular plugin that allows us to sanitize HTML content and safely display it in our application. So back here in app.js, we have to add this as another one of our dependencies. So we'll say ng sanitize. We'll also have to add a script tag for it. So let me copy this, and it's going to be angular-sanitize, angular-sanitize-min.js. If we come back to the browser and refresh the page, you can see we don't have any errors, which means that the script was found and that the dependency was properly injected. Now, the next thing we have to do is, instead of just submitting the text like this, we have to actually bind it to the paragraph using ng-bind-html. And so we're going to bind the text like that. So now if I refresh the page and add the b tag, you can see right away that everything is emboldened down below, and then I can close the b tag. Notice we have some errors showing up in the console. That's okay. These are sanitize::bad parse errors. The problem with this is every time I type in the text area, that is automatically rendered as HTML down below, and before I finish the tag or before I add an ending tag, this is considered bad HTML. So these are errors we can just ignore. But now that we can parse HTML, we can go ahead and use the highlighting. So first, we need a way to actually search for text within our field. So let's add another paragraph between these two. And inside of it, we will have an input element, and this will be ng-model, and we can say query. This, of course, will give us a search box right here. But now we need a way to wire up whatever the query we type in is to our actual text. And this is actually very easy. What we can do is just say pipe this text through the highlight filter and pass that filter the query. So now if I go ahead and refresh this page and I go ahead and type $, for example, you can see we do have the word here, but it's not actually being highlighted or anything. However, if we look at the HTML here, right here, notice that right here you can see we have a span wrapping that word that we searched for, and it has a class of UI-match. This is what Angular UI does for us. It wraps everything that matches our search in a span with a class of UI-match, and we can style it however we want. So up at the top here, let's add a style tag, And in here, we can say .ui-match, and let's just say background equals, let's say light blue. And why don't we say the color is going to equal dark blue. So now if I refresh the page, we can go ahead and search for elit, and you can see we have that word right in there being highlighted. And if I clear it, it clears. Now currently this search is case insensitive. So you can see right in here we have SED with a capital S. If around the same place I put SED with a lowercase s, and then I search for SED, you can see that both of these are highlighted. If you want your search to be case sensitive, you can add another colon here and say true after the query there, passing true as a second parameter to highlight. And now if I refresh the page and I add sed back in, now if I search for sed, you can see that only lowercase sed is found. And if I change it to an uppercase s, you can see that only uppercase sed is found. Of course, you don't have to just type true in here. You could add maybe a checkbox after our search box here saying case sensitive or not, and as that is checked, you can change that value. But now you know that the highlight filter does offer that as an option. So there you go. That is the highlight filter from Angular UI.